Okay, let's see now. Twitch has accepted the stream. YouTube has accepted the stream. Facebook has accepted the stream. Okay, when you see the timer do what it's supposed to do, you start the you go on the air, okay?
Okay. Could you move the timer to like the top left?
Top left, sure. On all of them,
Or actually top right.
top right? You would prefer?
Yeah. That's good. Thank you.
All right, and then start the show.
Yeah, we can start.
All right, here we go.
Hello, Think Twice Radio, and welcome to the Metachewy Livestream with Metachewy. I'm Metachewy. Welcome to my show. So, thanks for tuning in. Today's show, in today's live stream, is going to be a raw, uncut, unedited version of some video. And we're going to talk about a couple topics. So, we're going to talk about the city of Buffalo, some movings and shakings going on within the city government and politics. Then we're going to talk briefly about the crypto sphere in Web3 and some of the recent developments, including a presidential candidate buying a burger with Bitcoin. And also, and then we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills and their recent performance and doing good. So let's get started. So first, I want to talk about the city's reassessment. The city of Buffalo has started their reassessment process. Now, what does that mean? The reassessment is a way that the city reconfigures the tax burden of the city. So this month, each homeowner or property owner in the city of Buffalo received a letter from the Department of Assessment and Taxation where they got essentially their assessment letter, right? Which essentially the city is redoing the tax burden. So we recently had a tax raise where they raised the rate of the tax. So each property owner pays taxes on their property, and how much you pay in taxes based on the tax rate. So it's what your assessed value is, or what how much value your property is versus the accepted rate or the tax rate. So yeah, I got a letter from the Department of Assessment and Taxation, as all city taxpayers did. But KLW or KW, KLW Municipal Inc. is the company that the city of Buffalo hired to do the reassessment. So the informal review process has begun. So when you get your reassessment, property owners essentially have two options. They can, one, accept what the city has said what their assessed value is, or they could protest. So the protest is a three-step process. First, it starts with an informal review hearing, where you schedule an informal hearing with the consultants to talk about your property and some of your data points. And then in December, they come back, if you did the informal hearing, with a redone reassessment. And if at that point you still want to challenge your assessment, you can come back and do a more formal hearing, and then you'll get a formal hearing. At that point, you need to hire a lawyer. So there's a three-step process. So really, the assessment process has begun, and you can do this by calling KLW at 716-827-1643 Monday through Friday between 8:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. and no later than October 9th, 2024. So all informal review sessions are by appointment only. And yeah, these informal hearings have already begun. So you have until October 9th to request an informal hearing with the consultants. There's several places. There's this, each homeowner or property owner got this letter that says, so where the informal review sessions, the locations, date, and time. So there's several locations throughout the city that are holding informal hearings, but again, you need to set up an appointment with the consultant. So you have to call the number before October 9th. So that the Broadway Market, Delvin Grider Community Center, the Frank Merriweather Library, Hennepin Community Center, there's many other places around the city. So I'm not sure if they're making you based on your council district, which location, but if you'd like to begin the process of challenging your property assessment, you have to call KLW and schedule an informal hearing. So again, that number is 716-827-1643. 716-827-1643. 716-827-1643. Call KLW Consultants to schedule an informal review hearing. And the assessment matters because this is the city essentially redoing the tax burden, right? So as part of the city's budgeting process, they come up with a budget, right, of how much money, based on revenues, expenses, how much money the city needs. There's several funding sources that the city has, such as state money and other sources, but kind of the gap that's left between revenue sources and what they need to meet all their expenses is the tax burden, and that the tax burden is carried by the property owners of the city. So so that number is kind of the number that the assessment's done. So essentially they're saying how big is this number, and then the tax burden is divided by over 93,000 parcels. So each of those parcels gets a different share of the tax burden depending on how much their property is worth. So if you have a vacant lot, your tax burden is less than if you own a skyscraper in downtown. Now it's very important that people are involved in the process because again, these numbers are just coming down from assessment and taxation, and if you don't challenge them and if you don't kind of push back, you'll kind of get what you're taking. And I know I attended an informal or a presentation with the assessment and taxation of the consultant where they had a couple PowerPoint slides and they showed that your taxes might stay the same, it might go down, but every person, my own personal taxes have, gone up in this recent assessment. And, many of the property owners, actually every property owner I know around the city has said that their proposed tax burden and the amount in taxes they'll be paying each year is going up. So, I think it's very important to know how the city is and how these consultants are redoing the tax burden. That's why I filed a FOIL, a Freedom of Information law request with the Department of Assessment and Taxation, requesting a machine-readable version of the consultant's data set of what their proposed assessments are for every single property in the city of Buffalo. And I'll share that. So that's why I filed a FOIL, a Freedom of Information law request with the Department of Assessment and Taxation, requesting a machine-readable version of the department's and the consultant's data set of the city's assessment roll and their new proposed assessment valuations. So let me know in the comments, and let me know if you have any questions or anything you'd like me to kind of help explain or look into. So I'm going to mash up this video a little bit on Twitter to try to make a 2-minute kind of clip because Twitter, I think it's important that, people know about this, and I just want to make sure that I have some raw material to work with on post-production. Okay, let's move on to the Eastside Parkways Coalition. So on behalf of the Eastside Parkways Coalition, we've filed an item with the Buffalo Common Council requesting a hearing at the October 8th Common Council Community Development meeting. On behalf of the Eastside Parkways Coalition, we filed an item with the Buffalo Common Council requesting to speak at the council's October 8th Community Development Committee meeting at 2 p.m. The East Side Parkways Coalition is requesting to speak on the full restoration. The East Side Parkways Coalition is requesting an opportunity to speak about the full restoration of the city's Humboldt Highway project. The East Side Parkways Coalition is requesting to speak on the city's Humboldt The East Side Parkways Coalition is requesting an opportunity to speak on behalf of all city residents on the full restoration of the Humboldt Highway. The East Side Parkways Coalition is requesting to speak on behalf of all city residents about the full restoration of Humboldt Parkway. We're very concerned about the state's Kensington Expressway project, and we believe that it is a citywide issue. It is a citywide issue that crosses all 9 council districts. And that's why we're asking to speak at the Buffalo Common Council. Now, if you also support the full restoration of the Humboldt Parkway, we request that you reach out to the Buffalo Common Council, either your own individual council member or the council member office. Call or send an email. It's most likely that without any public participation, the Common Council will receive and file this item. The Common Council, they kind of default to, this isn't a city project, this is a state project, this isn't our council district. But the East Side Parkways Coalition believes that this is a citywide issue that deserves a moment of discussion in the Buffalo Common Council chambers. And if the city of Buffalo residents aren't allowed to speak in the council chambers and discuss this important issue, then where are we allowed to speak with our elected representatives? The Buffalo Common Council's mission is to represent their constituents and hear their concerns. And that's why if we don't have the opportunity to speak in the Common Council chambers, where does the Buffalo Common Council suggest that we speak? The East Side Parkways Coalition has also invited all Common Council members and all city residents to a press conference on Friday, October 4th at 11 a.m. on the Humboldt Parkway near the intersection of Northampton. The East Side Parkways Coalition is hosting a press conference on Friday, October 4th at 11 a.m. on the Humboldt Parkway at the intersection of Northampton. We're looking for as many people as possible to show up, so if you can make it on October 4th to the press conference to support the full restoration of the Humboldt Highway, please attend. The East Side Parkways Coalition has also invited Buffalo Common Council members to our public meetings, which are held the first Thursday of every month at St. Philip's Episcopal Church and on the third Thursday of each month at Delvin Grider Community Center. All members of the public and Common Council members are invited and welcome to attend, and we hope you do. So I'm going to speak a little bit about, off the cuff, I mean, the Humboldt Highway project, I think, is the most important issue, especially in this upcoming mayor's election. I think it's just an opportunity. I think when you think about where the city of Buffalo is now and kind of understanding our history, of knowing the history. So first you have to understand that, the city of Buffalo at one point was called the best planned city in the world. It was, designed by a world-renowned architect, Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park in New York City. And he designed the city from scratch as, a city in a park, not a park in a city. So the vision and what Buffalo's legacy and what our birthright was this linear parkway system that had, I think it called it the Emerald Necklace of you had parks throughout the city that were connected with linear pathways so that residents could essentially, anywhere in the city, step outside their door onto a parkway and easily enter a park. And I think so that was our original legacy. And then in the 1960s, due to urban renewal and Robert Moses and a lot of the planners at the time who were building, a different era, right? The 1960s, they were building, the new America, the post-World War II American city was based on the car, right? Everyone was going to own a car, was going to live in the suburbs, and we needed to get people in and out of the city. And the easiest way to build a highway at that point and to accommodate the car was to destroy the Humboldt Parkway. So they cut down a bunch of old oak trees, beautiful parkway, and they built a highway in its place. And that highway, which is still, at its last, the end of its useful life and is decaying visibly, you can visibly see, is at the end of its useful life and needs to be, something needs to happen to it. It needs to be fixed, it needs to be maintained. And the state's vision and the Department of Transportation's vision has been to maintain vehicular capacity. And this highway, it did a lot of harm to the city of Buffalo, right? When you think of a lot of the neglect and decay, you can think of it as a ripple effect from this highway, right? You had, it essentially cut off a portion of the city. It divided a neighborhood, and it really did a lot of harm to the residents, not just health outcomes, right? It created toxic fumes in tunnels, air pollution, noise pollution from cars, but also prevented, neighbors that, lived on the Humboldt Highway from getting it. Really had a devastating effect on the neighborhood. And by building, so essentially, we sit at a point in time where, essentially, Buffalo is one of the most segregated cities in the country, and it's not a unique situation all over the United States. Cities, through the practices of redlining, through urban renewal, we have cities all over the United States, which a lot due to transportation infrastructure such as highways is a very segregated place. You have people of different races and ethnicities living in different pockets, separated. And Buffalo's no different. Everyone in the city either knows through their own experiences that we are a very segregated city. And I fear, and this fear I think is shared by a lot of people, that the status quo isn't good enough anymore. We need to, bury this mistake. It was a mistake. It was built for a certain time, but it's 2024 now. And we need to prioritize the human beings and the people that live in the city, not vehicles, not commuters that live in the suburbs, but we need to, for a project in the city of Buffalo, we need to prioritize the people that live in the city of Buffalo. And that's why I don't think any project as currently scoped in the city could be as transformational as leaving the legacy of the Humboldt Highway in the past and building a new, better future through the full restoration of the Humboldt Parkway system. So essentially burying the Humboldt Highway, taking cars and vehicles, taking that priority away, and building, a natural park that would not only improve the health outcomes by eliminating the poisonous particulate matter 2.5 that's concentrated at the endpoints of this proposed tunnel, but also by connecting Delaware Park and MLK, Martin Luther King Park on the east side, you would allow residents of the east side to have access to, Delaware Park and a world-class park system. But I think it would do a lot towards actual integration, actually beginning to heal some of the racial divisions in our city that are not just social, but are actually baked into the cake of our infrastructure. And I think by connecting those parks and allowing any resident to easily, take a leisurely stroll, ride their bicycle, or just walk from Delaware Park to MLK Park or to MLK Park and back to Delaware, would do a lot and would really, I think that target, that aim, in aiming to reconnect those two parks and not only bridge the divide on Main Street, I think would that's the vision that the city of Buffalo needs to, that's our best vision. And I don't think the status quo is not good enough anymore, whether it's the pending and fiscal cliff that our city faces, or maintaining vehicular capacity for an era that's not around anymore. We need to rethink and re-strategize and reprioritize how we operate in the city. And I think standing up to the state, the Department of Transportation, and as the people, and people saying we don't want this and we want you to listen to us. We have $1 billion that could transform our city, and we need to prioritize the viewpoints of our residents. So that's a little off the cuff rant. Not a rant, but I think these ideas are shared by lots of people, and it's very disappointing when we file items with the Buffalo Common Council, who are elected representatives, and we're received and filed. We're told we can't speak in the chambers, the people's chambers. Even some of the Common Council members have told our coalition that if you want us to do something about it, tell us how you'd like us to use the charter, or point to specific items in the charter. And that's not the job of citizens. The job of the citizens is not to interpret the charter and apply it to concerns. The job of citizens is to voice our concerns, and the job of our elected officials and Common Council is to be subject matter experts on the charter, hear our concerns, and then hear our concerns and apply the powers of the charter to help address our concerns. So I hope that this item is not received and filed, but given my experience, if I was a riverboat gambler, I'd put my money on it being received and filed. So please, if you would like to see the full restoration of the Humboldt Parkway discussed in council chambers, please reach out to your Common Council member. It's our right. It's our right as the people of the city of Buffalo, the taxpayers of the city of Buffalo, to have our voice heard in the chambers. And whether the council decides not to act on our concerns, it's our right, and we have a right to the chambers and to voice our concerns. And we hope that this item will be not received and filed, but will be sent to the Community Development Committee on October 8th at 2 p.m. And I hope that if it is accepted and passed the Community Development, I hope that you'll be able to join us and hopefully have our voice heard. I know at today's Community Development meeting, there was like one item on the agenda, so it's not like they're particularly busy with other community development concerns. Okay, I want to talk about the mayor's race. So I think I've talked about a couple of things, but Mayor Byron Brown, he's stepped aside as mayor of the city of Buffalo, and he was offered a job at the Off Track Betting Corporation, which is a public entity that does gambling. I'm not 100% sure, but essentially he's been offered a job and he's negotiating. And people have asked me, and I think there's been just a general concern of why is this happening? Why would the mayor, take a job for a state gambling agency when he's elected? And I think this comes back to the fact that, the truth is that our city is facing a fiscal cliff, right? The reassessment's one part of it, and trying to increase the tax burden and increase how the tax burden is paid. At the end of 2024, the city's American Rescue Plan dollars run out, and there's been some structural deficits in the city's budget for not just this past fiscal year, but going back decades. And that reckoning is finally here. I think we've all kind of been pushing it, but I think I use the analogy, of what this feels like to me, my perceptions, right, in the sea. And I think the Titanic's a good example of, in the sea, when you're, steering large ships, right, the captain of a ship, I think it's written into the code of being a ship captain, right, that you go down with the ship, or you see that all your passengers get off the ship before you yourself leave. You're the last person on board. And this very much feels to me, and I think to others, as our captain, right, has abandoned ship. Our mayor is negotiating a new raise and another thing, while it will be left to the city's tax base, over 93,000 parcels and over 250,000 residents to, fend for themselves and pick up the damage. And I think this mayor's race, obviously, I think my personal opinion is, I think I've said this for a while. There would be nothing the single thing that could be most transformational for the city is a change in executive leadership. So with that, I am glad that, we can maybe turn the page on, this past era. I think there's been good and bad things of the current administration, but it's 2024 and we need to start looking forward. And the mayor's race, I think, has an opportunity for, a new administration, new thoughts, new ideas. And I think some of the structural issues also present great opportunities, right? One example is the city's ownership of vacant lots. So, over, over many years now, the city has engaged in a strategy of demolition by neglect, demolition by actual, demolitions. But the city, and it's not even sure what the exact number is. It's kind of unclear, but the city has ownership of thousands of vacant parcels that, one, are not producing any tax revenue, are not contributing to the city's tax base, and two, are just sitting idle, right? So I don't know how or why, what the strategy or the thinking was there, and that's not really for me to get into, but I think I think it presents an opportunity for a new administration, a new vision, a new way for the city government to actually utilize those lots, right? It's a great tragedy in a lot of ways, but also a great opportunity if we can see that a lot of the city's lots are actually gone to the highest and most productive use for those lots instead of, a same few bunch of developers and people with access and privilege. I think it would be great to have actual community ownership. And and I think the Investigative Post has done some great stories has done a story where there's, lots of people lining up to be mayor. So I think it's something we'll cover on the show. But many people, both, common council members, some outsiders, some real extreme outsiders. But there's lots of horses in the race, and I'm excited as a city resident to see some of the new voices that emerge and some of the new ideas, both from people that are, in the machine itself and from outside the machine. So looking forward to, a new election season, which, will be here quicker than I think we think. Okay, so I'm at 34 minutes in. Okay, so I think I'll do a quick one. So on, let's see if I can get the date here. So on Monday, September 23rd, I attended an event at 1412 Jefferson Avenue. The event was a Justice for Geraldine, which was so essentially there's a group of community activists and people that are calling on the Erie County District Attorney Michael Keene to exonerate Martin Sostre and Geraldine Robinson for a crime in 1967 that I think it's coming to light that they were set up for and framed for. So there's details on the case, but essentially we had two members at an Afro-Asian bookstore at the corner of Jefferson at 1412, which is now a vacant lot. Was kind of a radical for the time, and I think Jefferson Avenue too. At one point, it was the city's black business district and really a thriving center for commerce, not just commerce but culture as well. And so in 1967, that corner at 1412 Jefferson was kind of a radical, progressive book club, a cultural center from some of the stories I heard from people there that actually attended it, right? Much before my time, but it sounded like a really progressive center, a really, vibrant place. And two members of the community, Martin Sostre, who I believe was the owner-operator of the bookstore, and Geraldine Robinson, who was, at the bookstore at the time. The FBI raided it, and it sounds like they were set up and essentially arrested and beat. And this group of activists is calling for the complete exoneration of Geraldine Robinson, and also that a couple other things. So there's a mural committee, and also that 1412 Jefferson, which is now a city-owned vacant lot, is used and really transferred to the community in a way where the community has ownership and has control and has a real voice in determining the future of that lot. It's a part of Jefferson Avenue that is a historic part of the city's, culture and economy. And we hope that the city will turn over ownership to work with the community to develop a community-focused vision of what happens to that parcel. So I encourage anyone that's interested in the story to explore it online. There's some documentaries which I will share in the comments. And yeah, we ask that you either get involved by contacting the district attorney and asking them for the complete exoneration of Martin Soste and Geraldine Robinson. Okay, so that's city politics. That's the first half of the show. Let's turn now. I want to talk a little bit about. Let's talk about crypto and Web3. So there's a couple. Let's see if I can pull it up here. So there's a big development in the crypto sphere this past week, and it was crypto related, but it was more about an institutional investor. So this week, BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset management, right? They kind of own everything, right? They own housing and, a large, powerful broker. They released last week a 9-page PDF, which essentially said that Bitcoin was a unique asset, and essentially not pumping it, but kind of beginning the process of, I think that PDF can kind of be thought of as, one of the signals of the beginning of institutional investment. Now, I don't think the institutions are going to run it, but I think BlackRock releasing a PDF saying that it has a place in an institutional portfolio is a big step towards more maybe mainstream adoption of crypto as an institutional asset, right? So I think when you think of crypto and Bitcoin specifically, and you think of, investors, institutions, and right, Bitcoin being there's a difference between Bitcoin being mainstream and Bitcoin being like a Wall Street institutional mainstream. So I think Bitcoin is probably kind of commonality around like people and individuals, but really at the institutional level, it's still kind of scoffed and laughed at. I remember at one point I had a job for one of the region's largest foundations where when I was working there, I told the executive vice president that, the community foundation should buy Bitcoin. And I was essentially laughed at, right? I was laughed at and kind of looked at like I was crazy. And maybe I was at the time, but I think when I had pitched that to a high level executive who at this point is now the executive director and makes, 7 to 8 times my salary, has still not bought it, but Bitcoin's up 3x since I proposed that. And I think, I guess it's a big deal because, right, institutions have lots of money. And if you start to see institutions adopt it, even if it's, if the talking lines and the talking heads, right, all these investment managers that institutions hire to manage their portfolios, if the common knowledge or the talking points of all these talking heads becomes, 1% of your portfolio should be invested in digital assets, right? 1% of institutional assets is a lot of money, and that's just 1%, right? So, I think that would create, right, especially in this bull run that's coming up. We had the halvening in April, and we're still, kind of in this crypto spring, late spring, beginning to see summer. So we could see, based on historic trends plays out. I think if you saw institutional investment and institutional adoption could be something that could be part of this upcoming bull run. I record this in September 2024, so we'll see. But something to keep an eye on. I don't think the institutions are all going to come in, but there's definitely, right, there's the technological adoption curve where you have innovators, early adopters, and then laggers at the end. So I think this cycle, and you've already started to see, some institutions, kind of those innovative early adopter institutions come in. So I'm not going to say all institutions will come in this cycle, but I think you will start to see some early adopters in the institutional space come in with some serious money. And I think one of the things I want to bring that up is I think one of the reasons I'm excited personally about Bitcoin, and also spiritually and as a human being, one of the reasons I'm excited is that Bitcoin, in this situation, right, when you have this emerging technology, I think that a good analogy to think of it is like the dinosaurs, right? So at one point, the folklore of the dinosaurs, we all know the story, right? Dinosaurs were these massive, large, scary, ferocious, raptors. Not all of them were scary. I think some of them weren't so scary, but they were large, they were huge, and they were massive. And I think if you were a primate or a primordial human at that time and you were in a tree and you just looked around and you'd be like, how will these dinosaurs will rule the earth forever? Look at them. They're 1,000 times my size. They can eat me in a little. I have no chance at them, right? And that was the way of the world. And it was kind of unimaginable to any, intelligent life at that time that life would be any different, that, dinosaurs would rule the earth forever. And there's no way that they were so large, so big, so powerful, right? And then an event occurred, right? So our understanding now is that there was, a meteor that hit the earth and changed the actual climate, the actual atmosphere, and that single event, right, that comet, that meteor, which then changed everything, actually at that point kind of flipped the dynamic of what was once a strength. So being big, being large, being strong was an advantage till the comet hit. And then at that point, it killed all of, the vegetation, which means that became scarce. So then if you're this massive, I don't know, stegosaurus or massive dinosaur that needs to eat 20 trees a day to keep going, I don't know how much they eat, but tons of trees, if all of a sudden now there's less trees out, your strength, your size, your mass is what was once an advantage because nothing could take you out is now a huge disadvantage because you don't actually have capacity. So I think again, right? And then the primates were small little creatures, feeble creatures that, well, I can survive on a couple bananas a day and stick it out. So I think you kind of saw this inversion of where once, being small and being nimble was a disadvantage because you were so small you couldn't take out the dinosaurs. An event occurred and then that became an advantage. I think coming back to the analogy of crypto, I think, the invention of Bitcoin, of blockchain, can be thought of as almost that meteor moment of, the world was the way it was, and then this event happened, and then it was changed forever. And one of the reasons I want to talk about institutional investment is I think this is a moment, this is a technology where actually being small, being little is your advantage, right? I think as normal people, as working people, small creatures relative to Goldman Sachs, to BlackRock, to Bank of America, to these large institutions, we are small individuals, but that also means, right, we're these large institutions, and I've worked for institutions, so I kind of seen how they operate, right? They have a culture, they have, boards of directors, they have staff. You can't just have, it takes a while for them to adapt. You can't just adopt Bitcoin. Whereas if you are a little person, if you're just a working person that sees your paycheck being eroded every paycheck, all you need to do is change your mind, right? One person changing their mind is much easier than getting 30 board of directors, a whole investment board that are, in this culture where they're doing well because the current model situates them, getting them to change their minds and then all of a sudden adopt Bitcoin is like this long, tedious process that's just not going to happen because they're the dinosaurs, right? They have all the advantages. What do you mean we should, and I think there's a quote, right, that like the hardest thing is like admitting you're wrong, right? It's so hard for humans to say either I was wrong or I didn't know, or to change their mind. I think that's why I'm excited about putting crypto and putting Bitcoin content out there, is because, the little guys, us, right? The people, the working class people, the poor people, the people that work every day, and, we have an advantage because if we can just change our own one minds, we can outpace the institutions. We can get to the crypto sphere, get to our life raft before the institutions. The institutions are going to claw to the old way of being because they had the power, this whole new world, right? I just think it's exciting, and I think I really encourage, I would hate to see crypto and I think this is a fear a lot of, people that are in the space fear, is that it just becomes a new old world, right? So I would hate to see BlackRock own half the Bitcoin supply. That would really, for me personally, like, put a dampen on the whole prospect of what Bitcoin could be, which is essentially building a new financial world, right? Building a global peer-to-peer monetary system where whether you have $1 or $1,000, whether you're white, whether you're black, whether you're straight, whether you're LGBTQ, it doesn't matter. The Bitcoin just cares about math. It doesn't care about any of your, social factors or attributes that people get discriminated against in the real world, right? Your credit score, right? It doesn't care about your credit score. It just cares, do you have the private key to the vault? Yes or no? I would hate to see this new world, right, just be taken over by the old dinosaurs. I would hate to see that. And I think one reason I'm passionate about putting out content is like trying to get as many little people, as many little guys to understand, right? Because if you can understand, all you have to do is change your one mind, and you can adopt Bitcoin faster, right? Even if you bought one Satoshi today, right? Just that decision, you would then own more Satoshis than most of the institutions on Earth. So you have this massive advantage. All it takes is you changing your mind, you adopting Bitcoin, you investing into Bitcoin, and literally if you can get there before and buy real estate. So think again too as Bitcoin is like digital real estate, right? There's a fixed supply. It's an island. It's like Manhattan Island. It's fixed, scarce real estate that you can buy, right? And own. And I think especially if this cycle is the start of institutional adoption, I would hate to see, right, again, I'm hammering a point here, but I would hate to see BlackRock own half of Bitcoin. I want to see, working class people, little people that are hurt in this old world. I want to see them get to this new world first and get advantages in all the riches that they could get, not just for themselves, but also, for democratizing wealth, democratizing finance for all human beings. And I think not just Americans too, but right, people in third world countries. And I think that's the one thing as Americans, it's hard for me to stand by and like Americans too are uniquely going to be harmed because we might be little individual working class people, but the current monetary system benefits us, right? We have the world's reserve currency. We've been riding on this. Whereas if you are from, I don't know, Bangladesh or from Argentina or Venezuela or a place in the Middle East or Ukraine where you're fleeing because there's war, or, you don't have a world reserve currency, those people, you don't really need to explain why Bitcoin's better. They just intuitively know that Bitcoin's better because they're straddled with oppression. They're straddled with, with war and with their currency not being good. So I think Americans too specifically have a unique challenge in their Bitcoin adoption curve of right. A lot of Americans don't even understand, like, who cares about Bitcoin? I have PayPal, I have Visa, I have MasterCard. That works perfectly fine. And I would just hate to see, especially Americans too, as we kind of, right, part of the current moment in 2024 of what's happening is America is losing its world reserve currency status, which we've had since World War II. And there's lots of factors that play into that. But it is happening, right? Even if the American dollar keeps a place in the world, it stays as the holy grail of currency is definitely, it's going away, right? It's before our eyes. Not just because of Bitcoin and crypto, because of other countries, right? China, Russia, Iran, these countries that are, yes, they're American enemies, and we as Americans say, you're the bad guy, but like, put yourself in their shoes. They are human beings just like us, and the current system where America has the guns, America has the money printer, and they just deal with it. That doesn't work for them. And we have a lot of external enemies that don't like this system, let alone the crypto sphere, which is kind of its own critique of the system, which is, fixed currency, not controlled by anyone. But also the American working class and poor themselves kind of realize that this whole American currency doesn't work for them because really the American currency is not working for American people. It's working for a handful of bankers and institutions and the Federal Reserve and these small groups of people that, control the money supply. And that was another thing that happened this past week was that the Federal Reserve actually cut interest rates. So I think that happened the same day that Donald Trump, the president candidate, bought a burger with some Bitcoin at a bar in New York City, which are like these two moments in time that are interesting themselves because I saw a lot of mainstream critique of, Donald Trump buys burger with Bitcoin and it's haha, look how funny that is. It's ridiculous. And it is kind of ridiculous, right? Like Donald Trump buying a burger with Bitcoin. It's a ridiculous story in its head, but like it's a joke, but at the same time, it's like also very serious. Like, oh my God, we just had a presidential candidate for the United States like use Bitcoin in a transaction. Like that's kind of a marker in crypto's history of like, oh my God, we are like moving towards adoption. But on the same day or the same week, what happened was the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates. They lowered interest rates half a percentage point, or 50 basis points. So what's that mean when the Federal Reserve, right? The Federal Reserve is the group of people, right? The small group of closed source people that control the supply of money, right? They are charged with, keeping employment stable and like keeping control on inflation. Essentially, these Federal Reserve bankers got together, looked at some old spreadsheets, and decided we're just going to cut interest rates. Which, for those that aren't as well versed in finance, I'm not an expert, but from my understanding is like the interest rate is literally the cost of borrowing money. So the reason that personal loans and mortgage rates are through the roof is the Federal Reserve has decided that interest rates will rise to make it harder to borrow money to kind of clamp inflation. So it's just kind of this interesting moment in time where you have this emerging, right? And so the Federal Reserve, you a group of people that are, closed source, aren't explaining to anyone, are just kind of like making it up as they go, trying the best they can with the information they have to like control the supply of money. Whereas the Bitcoin in this new world is really just algorithm based, right? Our current halving dictates that, a little over 3 Bitcoins will be made every block. And that will happen till the next halving. So it's kind of this contrast of closed source Federal Reserve. We change interest rates based on how we feel, based on some Excel sheets we have, versus the new world of saying, we know what the supply will be and what will continue to be till 2140, till 21 million coins. So that's a little bit of ranting and raving on the crypto space, but I think one topic I've been thinking around is that 2009 is the new 1492. So what do I mean by that? So 1492, I don't know if any Zoomers grew up with this, but when I was, I'm a millennial. When I was growing up in school, we learned this. This was before Indigenous People Days. This was when Columbus Day was like a holiday, and it still is technically a holiday. But we would learn this, in addition to like having Thanksgiving, where we would dress up as Indians and pilgrims and have a meal, like which in retrospect is like, I can't believe that I was forced to participate in that as a kindergarten, because it's just like very historically, I don't know, wouldn't fly in today's environment. But right, one of the rhymes we learned in school was, in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and there's a whole other verses, but like that's the line I remember is 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And like, why did we learn that, right? And I think right, when I say 2009 is the new 1492, right, we learned about 1492 because Columbus sailed the ocean blue is really about like the fundamental change in Western civilization because of Columbus, right? Columbus discovered, he sailed the ocean blue and he discovered North America, which I think, more research is coming out that like probably human beings knew more about North America, but like from a Western European point of view, really 1492 was the first time where like an explorer put on a map and returned to a king and said, or I don't even know if Columbus specifically had a map, but like it was the beginning of the actual discovery of this new world of North America, which changed the trajectory of like human civilization, but also Western society in general, right? Like having this new world. Obviously, I'm an American. I live in America today. Like my life was changed by that event. And I think, when I say 2009 is the new 1492, in 2009, Satoshi mined the first Bitcoin block in the sky. And right, I think we're so close to 2009 that it's hard for us to really see it. But I think it's the same as if you were in medieval Europe in 1495, right? Or let's say it was, 1502. It was 10 years after the discovery of North America. I don't know if that information would have made its way back to the peasants and the ramifications. I'm sure if you had asked peasants in 1502 about Columbus and North America, they wouldn't have known. I think it's the same way with crypto. Like we've had this event, 2009, Satoshi mined the first Bitcoin block in the sky. And I think we're still so close, right? It's 2024, so we're just over 15 years since the actual mining of the first Bitcoin block. And I think some people are starting to see it, but I really think it's going to take humanity, it's going to take us a while to actually fully understand the ramifications of the discovery, which it is, right? It's the discovery of blockchain, which is really just the discovery of a solution to the Byzantine generals problem, which is a math equation, right? And the Byzantine generals problem is kind of, and I'm not a mathematician, but I'm going to explain the best from my understanding, is that essentially the Byzantine general problem is like, how do you get people to trust each other? And like, we've always been constrained through not having a solution to this problem of like, through communication, like we have to have these institutions, because the institutions, in order to have two parties trust each other, they have to have some sort of middleman that they both trust. Because if they can both trust someone in the middle, then like, as long as that middle person is trustworthy and holds up their end of the deal, like it's good. Whereas like two people, the constraint we've had on society, economy, but also like in general is two people, they can trust each other, but like if two people trust each other, the only thing that it takes is one of those people breaking the trust. Now that you can't have a transaction. Whereas kind of a middleman or a bank was made as kind of a workaround to this Byzantine generals problem. And Bitcoin, through its algorithm, it appears to have solved the Byzantine generals problem. And now we can have transactions where two parties don't need to trust someone in the middle, right? We've solved the math on the Byzantine generals problem, and we can have transactions now peer-to-peer, right? So like, what does that mean, right? If I can trust you and you can trust me, and we know that it's good because, we're trusting Bitcoin or we're trusting a blockchain, kind of removing that middleman, like removing, whether it's a bank, whether it's an institution, anyone in the middle, like that has such ramifications for society that like we can only like fantasize about now. Like it's really unclear, right? If people can trust people peer to peer, right? Especially with the internet too, it really is like, I know we grew up thinking like world peace, like kumbaya. Like if someone said like, I'm working for world peace, you kind of laugh out because it's like such a ridiculous concept on its head. Like world peace, like that'll never happen. But like, I think what we're seeing with the internet, and what I would hope to see with the internet is like, and I think Bitcoin, right? It's not just, there's an evolution of consciousness to this part, but it's also, Bitcoin is right. If we have money where like I can trust someone in Iran or I can trust someone in Ukraine, and we don't need our governments to represent us, and I can just, I have nothing personally against anyone in Ukraine, anyone in Russia, any individual, right? It's all our entities, these institutions or governments that represent us, that they have issues. And now because my government is mad at the Russian government, I have to go fight Russian people. Like I don't even know a Russian person, and they don't even know me. How could I fight an individual person? So I think the idea of like this internet with building a peer-to-peer civilization where peers can negotiate and trust people without having to like have a king or have some sort of institution or middleman, represent them or trust. It's like, it's similar to like the printing press in a way of like you were fundamentally changing society in a way that we can't fully understand now. And I think it's just a matter of time. I think there's a philosopher that said like, there's nothing like an idea whose time has come. And I think Bitcoin, it feels like, that maybe the time's come for, right, a global monetary currency that's not controlled by any one institution, country, anyone. It's just kind of a neutral thing. So those are some kind of rantings and ravings from a self-described cypherpunk. But I think, bringing it back full circle, one of the reasons I'm just excited about the space is when you think about a lot of the problems we have, whether it's, hyperinflation, whether it's, abuse of power, bailing out bankers, just think the crypto space, right? There's lots of scams too, lots of scams. But there's also some hope, right? There's kind of the philosophy of what it's born on, which is like actually building a new mode of being for human beings. And I think one of the things, it just feels like we're at a point in evolution for humanity is like, we've conquered, right? We've proven we can conquer other human species, right? The Neanderthals, I forget the other names of them, but like, right, we conquered them. We've really conquered, we're like the apex predator. We've proven we can just, conquer nature, we can destroy nature, but like, we've kind of at this point of evolution, not just with ourselves, but with Mother Nature of like, can we adapt to like cooperate? Can we like turn our human species into like cooperating, not just with ourselves, but cooperating with nature? And maybe Bitcoin, I think having a money, right? Having a money where it's, trust is built into it, because, it's a type of game where especially the current fiat system is kind of like, the reason we're starting wars is over money, right? It's all about the United States has the money printer, right? We have the power, we have the reserve currency, and with that power comes, power. We have, the ability to print money and like dictate to the rest of the world, and like other countries want that power too. But I think if you took that power, right, the power to control money away from any individual, the amount that would do for peace, right? If there was no reason to start a war because no one could control the money, there'd be no reason to start a war. And if no one could start a war, then maybe we could live in a more peaceful society. So I think the analogy too of like human beings, money is to humans as water is to fish. So the fact that our money is so polluted, like we all know there's so much corruption behind the scenes. If you could actually and the corruption all comes from trusting, right? We have to trust people, whether it's the Federal Reserve or whether it's through people with power, we have to trust them. And, I think we all know that, power corrupts absolutely. So if you could just take the ability for any individual or to corrupt money and build, a money that's open, transparent, that no one can corrupt, the ripple effects of that is something I don't understand, and none of us do until it actually plays out over time. So yeah, again, I'd just love to see people. I think it's the answer to a lot of problems we face, and I don't think it's really common knowledge at all. I think it's still kind of laughed at, but again, we're at a point in time, especially early in Bitcoin's development, where these are all utopian dreams, and I think these are some of the utopian dreams of our founder. It's not just going to happen, right? It's up to people that use the technology. It's up to us as people, and especially us at the beginning of the adoption of the technology. We have the ability to have radical effects on the outcomes of it, and it's really up to us, the people of users, early adopters too, to steer this ship in the right direction. Because once the ship gets going on a course, it's hard to change. And again, like I said, with BlackRock releasing this paper, I would just hate to see Bitcoin and just this technology that has potential, right? Potential energy, not kinetic energy, right? It's got a thing. It's not perfect, but it's still in its early stage where we could direct it in a way that is positive. But at the same time, if we just sit back and do nothing, then BlackRock's going to own all the supply, and yeah, so it's really, I think, up to individuals, right? I think part of the internet generally is just, it's empowering individuals. And I think it's up to people, users, but also human beings to use this technology, whether it's AI, to really direct it in a way that's beneficial for the future of our species and for the future of humanity and for making the world a better place and world peace and all that stuff, which is kind of woo-way, but it's also it's important. I think it feels very easy to not be a victim, but passively accept technology, whereas I think human beings in general just need to do a better job at and something I'm still struggling with is dictating technology, dictating your humanity technology, not your technology dictating its technology to humanity. So yeah, so let's close it now with let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. So the Buffalo Bills, they looked great. I mean, they just shellacked the Jaguars, 47-10, and it was great. I think as a fan, as a Buffalonian, as a Buffalo Bills fan, I mean, this team just feels different. It's 3 games in, so they do this every year where they just get your hopes up. But I think the one thing that's pretty apparent by this team is they feel like a team, right? It's Josh Allen he's playing out of his mind. He's playing great, but it just seems like they're operating in such an egoless kind of way of they're a true team of nobody's. They spread it around. They can beat you many ways. It just feels very good. I think even Josh, I think one of his best plays, I mean, he played a great game, but one of the best plays I think of the game was when he slid, right? There was a couple of plays where he just slid, gave himself up, which is wow. That's just seeing that play as a Bills fan, because he still has that reckless, but I think he still, but knowing when to use that is something I think he's working on. I mean, the offensive line looks great too. We look so sturdy on the offensive line, which is great. I mean, I think the Super Bowl winners, they always have good guys in the trenches, and the offensive line looked great. The defense just look great. I mean, the whole team, they really just look fantastic. And I mean, as a Bills fan, there's been so many heartbreaks and so many times your hope gets up, and right when you're, out of it, even I was going to this year, I was like, oh, this will just be a rebuilding year. Nothing big will happen. Now 3 games in, they're playing good, and now the whole city, the whole region just feels oh, we're going to the Super Bowl, or not we're going there, but But like we have a shot, or like, oh, this could be a year. And I think we'll see. It's a long year. I mean, 3 games in, I think some of the biggest concerns for me are like our injuries going to pile up, right? The Bills psyche just goes, the Bills fan psyche goes into, injuries are going to pile up. We're going to have some bad luck. But yeah, the team, they feel they've got a vibe to them. And especially with the fans, it's just got the start of a special season could be coming, but we've also, but yeah, cautiously optimistic, but they've been a joy to watch, and they're really a team, which I think is great. And I think even Bills fans, I mean, we get caught up on Super Bowl, Stanley Cup, we just want to win, but like really, like what we really just want is like a group of guys and a team we like cheering for. And I think some of the Sabres teams in like the 90s where they were just a bunch of grinders and like they weren't talented, but they played hard every week. Like that just speaks like the ethos of like being a Buffalonian and just like working hard. Like that's all we really want, is just a team that like we identify with. And I think that's what makes this team so potentially enjoyable, is like they just feel like a team. They all work together. They, it's it's really a true, Josh Allen is clearly the leader, but like everybody's doing their part, playing their role, and they just seem to be clicking, and they just seem, they're just so far seem like a team that the city itself could rally around, especially with, Buffalo Joe, who's from Lancaster High School here in Buffalo. Like actually having a local guy on the team is like a whole other element of having, Buffalo Joe or having a Buffalo guy on the team is just another, especially with a couple other UB graduates. So it just feels good and optimistic and hopeful to see how the rest of the season progresses. So that's a little Buffalo Bills analysis. So that's my full show. And thanks for tuning in. Until next time, this is Metachewy.